like I mentioned, just yesterday, it was 5 minutes or so right before the show, the news was announced that the Dallas Cowboys are signing star wide receiver CeeDee Lamb to a brand new contract extension. It is anticipated to be 4 years worth $136 million. It is just behind Justin Jefferson's deal as the second highest wide receiver contract in terms of average annual value. Believe it additionally makes him the second highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. So the Cowboys, after what was a little bit of a stalemate for a lot of the offseason in terms of will they, won't they pay their 3 stars eligible for contract extensions, CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott, and Micah Parsons, they get the first one done. Again, 4 years, $136 million, $100 million guaranteed. Now, we don't have, I believe, the exact details in terms of the annual breakout per year of what his hit is going to be against the salary cap. So that's something that's going to be important to keep an eye on as to what it looks like moving forward here, because as we're going to talk about a little bit later in the segment, Cowboys have a lot of very important players coming up on expiring contracts in the next year or so, and depending on how they space out this massive amount of money that they are paying CeeDee Lamb is going to be very important as to how they can act in these next couple seasons. But I wanted to sort of take the angle today to talk about winners and losers from the fallout of this deal. The first very obvious winner, of course, is CeeDee Lamb, where Lamb now is a $136 million man, and it is very much deserved based off of everything that he was able to accomplish last season. I mean, he's just continued to year after year get better, but last season reaching new heights, becoming an all-pro first-team player, leading the NFL in receptions, having 1,700 yards across the board. Everything went perfectly for CeeDee Lamb to set him up, again, deservingly so, to arrive at this type of a contract. So obviously, again, big winner is CeeDee Lamb, but sort of stemming off of that as well is the idea that I think that Ja'Marr Chase is a very big winner out of this deal as well, considering the fact that he's the wide receiver that sort of, at least to me, feels like the natural next guy to get bank-breaking money, because of the fact that he is still so young, just 24 years old. He has been able to establish himself so early on in his career as a very reliable wide receiver one. Being the first option for Joe Burrow and this Bengals offense, he has had no less than 1,000 yards in any season. That's including in 2022 when he played in just 12 games. That's including last year with all of the injuries that were occurring with Joe Burrow that sort of knocked him off of his spot. The production has continued to be there for Ja'Marr Chase, and I feel like, in my head at least, there is very little doubt that he's going to continue to get better as the years go on. And I think that he is the natural next player to get this contract, which sort of leads me into our first loser of this deal. And I think that that is the San Francisco 49ers, because Brandon Ayuk is, I would also argue, a little bit of a winner as well, but more than Ayuk being a winner, I think, is the 49ers being a loser out of this, because Ayuk is also very much in play to get a massive contract, whether it's an extension with the 49ers in the next year or so, or if it is when he eventually hits free agency and he signs with a new team. Brandon Ayuk is 1,000% going to get paid. I think that in terms of how much they are going to make, just my personal guess and predictions on, what this probably looks like for Ja'Marr Chase versus Brandon Ayuk financially speaking, I think that Chase probably has a little bit more of a backbone to his case of becoming the next highest paid wide receiver in the league. He's a couple years younger, like I mentioned, he has shown that he is a true wide receiver one. I think that Brandon Ayuk is a wide receiver one on the majority of teams. But that being said, obviously with all of the different weapons in San Francisco, it's not like he gets that level of opportunities yet, which you can use in either direction. On one hand, you can make the argument that once he goes to a team and becomes the wide receiver one, he's going to start to get the number of targets of a Jamar Chase or a CeeDee Lamb, and that he will be able to live up to those expectations, or that when he has this change of scenery, there is a chance that it could be exposed a little bit. A recent example of this, and not saying I have much more faith in Brandon Ayuk than this, but just walk with me here. A recent example, of course, is Juju Smith-Schuster, who had those years when he was the number 2 to Antonio Brown, was never able to fully recapture that, had a nice season in 2022, but again, it's just very clear he was never a true wide receiver one. I think that Brandon Ayuk is capable of that, but all of this tie back into San Francisco is I think that the market just took a big time bump in terms of how much these star wide receivers are going to get paid. San Francisco already knowing that they are going to be due for multiple big contracts in these next couple years, mostly predicated on the fact that Brock Purdy is going to be incredibly more expensive now in a couple years relative to what he is now. And you know, these deals that come off the shelves for these wide receivers, I think only hurts the 49ers' chances of being able to retain Brandon Ayuk. Ayuk is going to ask, especially after all of this public drama that's taken place over the course of the offseason, I think that he is going to be looking to get paid wherever that may be. And there's a chance that, you know, he sort of pins this CeeDee Lamb contract against the 49ers in negotiations, because you're talking about Ayuk, who was first-team All-Pro last year, or second-team All-Pro, last year, and should be continuing to build on that. Another guy who just feels like has gotten better and better with each season in the NFL. So that is definitely something that I'm keeping an eye on as well. Another loser here, I'm giving it to the Dallas Cowboys. Now, they aren't losers in this deal in the sense that it was the wrong deal to make. CeeDee is very much worth the money that they just paid him. That being said, it's more about the process, about how the Cowboys have acted this offseason, that makes me think that they are a slight loser in this. Because why did they wait so long to get this deal done with CeeDee Lamb? And then if you're going to wait out the entire offseason, see Justin Jefferson and Amon-Ra St. Brown both get paid these massive deals, why pull the trigger now? Now, I think that if they had known that this was 100% going to be somebody they have to lock down, I think getting on top of it earlier rather than later would have saved them some money if they could get that in before the market was reset this offseason. But I also think that, you know, now at this point, it's the argument as to why now is about, well, CeeDee Lamb was at least threatening the idea of whether or not he could sit out for this season. And I just don't think that that is a really realistic outcome of if they didn't pay him. Now, they 100%, the Cowboys are going to be reliant on CeeDee Lamb this upcoming season with a real lack of super talented running backs. You don't feel like there's much depth at the receiver position for the Cowboys. Some fine other options, some fine tight ends, but ultimately it's CeeDee Lamb and then a significant gap between the next highest skill position player, obviously not named Dak Prescott. But I understand. Cowboys felt like they were a little bit desperate in terms of bringing back CeeDee Lamb. My argument is I don't think there was any way that CeeDee was going to sit out a significant amount of games. I just don't think that that's really what NFL players are looking to do this year, ever since Le'Veon Bell decided to do so, whatever year that was, 2016, 2017, something like that. I just don't think that holdouts are really to be expected. 2018 is when he held out, Le'Veon Bell, that is. But I don't think that that's really a realistic outcome here. And CeeDee Lamb, he could have only really afforded, quite literally afforded, considering with the collective bargaining agreement, the fines that you get if you sit out games. I don't think he was sitting out really any longer than 4 games, and you'd prefer for him to be there, but I kind of think that he would have been there. Now, that being said, I just want to be fair here. We did just see Chris Jones, defensive tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs. Him set out the first game of the Chiefs season last year, and his absence was missed, and the Chiefs ended up losing that game in the season opener against the Lions before figuring out the restructured contract and ultimately getting that deal done, at least for the time being. So it's not like it is an entirely unheard of thing for players to still sit out. We saw it last season. But I sort of have doubts about the legitimacy of those threats now in 2024. The NFL is a factory. I don't think that it benefits the players whatsoever to really sit out like that. So I kind of felt like a little bit of a panic move to me from the Cowboys. Again, I think it's a good deal, a good enough deal at least, with the value that you're getting out of CeeDee Lamb, that this shouldn't blow up in their faces unless something unforeseen occurs, like an injury. But I would just say to that as well that the timing of this just seemed so weird to me, and I think the Cowboys cost themselves more money by waiting as long as they did, and also just the order of events with still having Dak and Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons, I don't think was ever really going to be re-signed this offseason, but still having those two massive pieces not locked down for the long-term future, it doesn't make me feel all that secure with what the future of the Cowboys looks here. I'll throw in one very light little winner in here as well, and that's going to be Trey Lance. He's not a winner based off of how he's been playing in the preseason, because it's been very rough for him, including 5 interceptions this past weekend. I have concerns with the Cowboys salary cap situation moving forward. You look at, like I mentioned, Dak Prescott is going to be an unrestricted free agent. You're going to have Zach Martin as a free agent. Some key players on defense, such as DeMarcus Lawrence and Osa Odigizua. So they are going to have a lot of money to dish out over the course of the next year. I'm skeptical about whether or not this is actually a deal is going to be done with Dak Prescott. If that's the case, they're probably going to be good enough this year that they don't have a top-end draft pick to find the replacement immediately. Would kind of lead me to believe that if Trey Lance is ever going to prove himself with an organization, that he'd maybe have an opportunity, probably re-sign for a very cheap 1-year deal, bring in a veteran, and give Trey Lance an opportunity to compete for the starting job in 2025, assuming that Dak Prescott is no longer there. So again, a little bit of an unrealistic situation there, but I was trying to come up with different, creative ways to go about this winners and losers list, and Trey Lance, I'm definitely not, buying into the process all that much there, but again, I think that, at least very slightly, Trey Lance could be perceived as a winner here, but, let me know in the comments what you think. But we are now going to be diving into a story that we were actually initially going to cover yesterday before we got the breaking news of CeeDee Lamb, and that's breaking down the quarterback battle in New England after a very eye-opening, to some degree, Sunday night football game. I know it's just preseason, but we continue to see Drake May outplay Jacoby Brissett over these past couple weeks, and Gerard Mayo, a first-time head coach, has a lot of pressure surrounding him to make sure that he assesses this situation correctly. So we are going to be breaking down what needs to happen for the Patriots in terms of being able to definitively decide upon how to go about the beginning of the season and who's starting at quarterback. So we're going to be breaking that down. But first, we will be taking a quick break. Do not go anywhere. We will be right back.